You're going to get into this. Okay. So here is what, here's the expense tracker. So many of y'all have seen this. I think everyone at your property that needs access to this or at your club should have access to this. If not, please shoot me a note. So a couple of things here. So I'll kind of go through the bare bones of the file and just kind of how it works. But I think the best way to start off, and John and his team have given me a good example here, is I want to show you how to memorialize these files. So I think one of the first questions that people have is, hey, are we going to get a new version of this file every month? And the answer is no. It's a live file in real time. Everyone will have eyes on it in Google Sheets. So the way that we want to memorialize this is to save it into Excel, save it into a folder somewhere, and send it in. I think what we've talked about is what we're going to start out doing is send the Excel copy in with your final DFR. So first couple days of February, you'll send in your January expense tracker with your January final DFR. So to memorialize this, very simple. When you get in here, you're going to click File, you're going to click Download, you're going to click Microsoft Excel, and it'll download it here. And then you simply open it up. And as you can see, that it just it perfectly mimics what was in Google Sheets, right? So you have an Excel version of your monthly expense tracker. So I'm just going to save as. I'm going to save this down to, you can save it wherever you want. I'm just going to save it to my documents, and that way you have it ready to send off. So that's kind of step number one as we talk about rolling forward into the next month. So that's the first part of what we're going to talk about. Is this is for the GMs. This is for you guys uploading your budget data and your prepaids data to roll forward that file. So that's the first step. The second step is, since it's a live file and you don't want data overlap month over month, you're going to want to clear off all of the tabs and all of the data that you've uploaded. Okay, so you have a file memorialized. Now you want a blank, clean file for the next month. So right off the bat here, you see some data here, right? I want to clear that off. One thing I want to point out, and John's going to shake his head, but right here, just calling this out, do you see how these transactions say January here? Now, they may be January invoices, or I'm sorry, they may be December invoices that we're putting into January because they were late or after the AP cutoff. Go ahead and include those in the prior month's tracker, right? So in December, you don't want to see any January so that you don't have overlap period over period or month over month. So just wanted to call that out, but I'm simply going to highlight all of this data. I'm going to click delete. So that's clear. Well, I'm in the Excel file, not the Google Sheet. That would probably help. Let me get in the Google Sheet. So I'm going to go ahead and delete all this. Make sure there's nothing left. Okay, we're good. I'm going to go into all of these not upload, but all these data tabs, your expense tracker, F&B retail, and I'll kind of explain those later. But for right now, we're just clearing data. Okay. Same thing here. Delete. Okay, so those are all deleted, right? The other thing that we'll kind of get into, but if you have comments here in these tabs, in your summary tabs, you're going to want to delete those as well. I don't think River Club has any, but just FYI. So then we'll get into deleting the data and getting the January budget data and the January prepaids data in there. So I'm going to start off just by deleting this report. And it's okay if these highlights stay. It's not a big deal. Just make sure the data is deleted. And same thing here. Now, the important thing here is I'm going to leave this column. I'm also going to leave these two, the text and the data here. And I'm simply going to start here in cell B3. I'm going to go over to column P. You can't edit column Q. That's locked. It's a formula that I'll explain later. and you just want to drag down and delete all your prepaids data, okay? So if I go back through these summary tabs, it's going to show zeros across the board, okay? That's what we want. So to get the new budget data, so for January into the month, you're going to go into NetSuite, and you're going to type in your first file is called expense tracker budget file, okay? So you type that in, you'll click on it. And then one thing, I think many of you know how to do this, but if you don't, it's a super helpful trick, not just with this report, but also NetSuite in general. Click on this little star right here and click add to shortcuts. Okay, then you can call it whatever you want, but then you click save. So if I click save here, I'm going to refresh the page. I have a bunch of these, but now I can simply, instead of typing that in every time, I can click my shortcut, I scroll down, I click on that, and it brings me to the right file every time, okay? So a couple of things of mine. Let me just get to the River Club. So a couple of things. When you see the file, it's going to show is this summarized data view, right? If you'll notice, we're pulling all of the budget data by GL. So if you pull the report and it's summarized like this, it's not going to give you the correct data. The file is not going to pull over all that budgeted data. So I don't know why NetSuite default to this. I'm working with our support team on it, but the fix is really simple. You're going to click your right arrow key on your keyboard just several times. So I'm just clicking it over and over. And what that does is it expands the data, right? So now you've got, and I'm going to roll forward these months, but now just to walk through this, you've got revenue and COGS. And just FYI, I would check this before you download it to Excel to make sure that you've got a good set of data, right? So I've got revenue and COGS, which are not applicable to the expense tracker, but they're there. And then a really, really important piece to this is when you get to salaries, okay? So general managers, whoever is going to be pulling this report, if you see any salary or wage data here, you have the wrong report. Do not copy and paste that into the expense tracker. The only thing you should see here for any budgeted labor is budgeted contract labor, okay? So if you see any salary and wage data, wrong report, you're probably in a file called expense tracker. That's the wrong report, okay? So we don't want folks at your property to be able, or your club to be able to see each other's payroll data. There's just sensitive information here, right? So the only thing that we want to see is budgeted contract labor, okay? So that's my first check. And then I'm just going to go down and make sure that I've got all my OpEx by department. This looks good. Okay, so this is a good, clean report. I'm going to roll this forward to January by adjusting these dates. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to click my right arrow key, right? Double check. Yep, got contract labor. That looks good. All my OpEx. Okay, good report. So now I'm going to click on this little Excel icon right here. And what that's going to do is it's going to download this report into Excel. I'm going to click on it. It's going to open it up. I'm going to go ahead and open that. Okay, so now I've got this in Excel. I'm simply going to highlight this entire report. I'm going to click Control-C for all you Excel nerds, or you can just click copy. You can right click and copy. I'm going to go back to my Google Sheet, and I'm going to click Control-V for Excel nerds, or I'm going to click paste. And that's going to paste it in there. Okay. So let's just check, just to show y'all a check that this went through and fed the data correctly. If I look at OpEx in Department 10, I've got a total budget number of 11K, right? If I go to Department 10, the summary tab, I see 11K right here. So what this is doing is it's pulling by GL your budgeted data right there, right? So then you get a total. So that way I know that the upload to the expense tracker worked and good to go, okay? So that's the data upload for the budget data. Now, prepaid data. I'm going to go back into NetSuite. I'm going to type in prepaid expenses and then dash operations report. Okay, now many of y'all have seen this before. This is a good forecasting tool. And the reason why we included this component into the expense tracker is so that the actuals that are coming from prepaid amortization every month are automatically getting uploaded into expense tracker. So you don't have to go down and dig through each of these GLs and upload them yourself. It's going to do it automatically. Okay. So whenever you pull this up, your screen might look blank and this will not be expanded. If you get there and your screen's blank, doesn't mean it's messed up, doesn't mean something's wrong. It just means you probably have the wrong filters. So you're going to click this filter. You're going to select your property. In this case, it's River Club, and you should only see your property. You might see River Club. I don't know why, but select your property. Okay. You're going to want to pull all departments, all expenses, all of the source account. You're going to leave this date blank, or not blank. You're just going to leave this alone. So make sure this says 4/30. Okay. Don't touch that. But to get to your month's data, you're going to go to this posting period right here. So I'm going to click this drop down. I'm going to go to January 2024. And this is going to give me all of my P&L impact from prepaid amortization for the month of January. Okay. So same thing. I'm going to click this Excel icon. It's going to do the exact same thing. It's going to go here. I'm going to click on it. Click that, and it's going to look like this. Okay. Now I'm going to go back to the expense tracker real quick. The reason why I went through, and I hope I made this abundantly clear. When I copy and paste the data, you're going to paste it in cell B3. And the reason I say that is because when you pull the data, you're not going to see this internal ID column. That is 100% okay. Internal ID is just a system tag for NetSuite that our team uses for some big upload files and things like that, right? You don't need to know anything about internal ID. It's just there for us, okay? So I'm just going to go ahead and delete this column because when you pull the data, it's going to look like this, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this whole data set. You don't need totals. If you want to throw them in there, fine, but you do not need them. Okay, the formulas, the file will pull all that together. So same thing, I'm going to click Control-C, or I'm going to click Copy once I have this data set selected. I'm going to go here to cell B3, right, where I've got it notated. And I'm going to press Paste or Control-V, okay? So what that's going to do is it's pasting this data, and then this formula, this is a formula that's gross. You don't want to mess with it, but it's protected so that you guys can't touch this. But all this is doing is it's giving the tracker, it's putting the GL in a format that the rest of the tracker can pull from, right? That's all it's doing. So it's just saying, hey, here in Department 30, there's $517 that's going to hit in sand and gravel. Okay. So a good way to check that this is working is I'm just going to filter this for Department 40, just so you guys can kind of see how this works. And I'm just going to look at property insurance right here. Okay. I'm going to go here to my summary tab. So I should see 10-44160. And it's GL 6382. I'm going to scroll down to GL 6382 and I see 10-44160. See that? Budget was spot on. So that way you're pulling actuals. And the other way that you can tell is up here those prepaid actuals are getting uploaded. And then you'll see here in the property summary that it's pulling for all departments, okay? So those are your two data uploads for GMs, and then whoever else on property. I think for those who it's not the GM pulling this and uploading this, we've had those conversations. Talk to me separately, but the intention is that the general manager does this every month, because the general managers right now are the ones who have access to these reports in NetSuite, okay? So that's uploading the data. So now you have a good, clean file. You've got budgeted data. You've got prepaid actuals. You're ready to start rolling, okay? So I just want to walk you through just the nuts and bolts of the file, okay? So here, this is honestly, I could care less if you upload this one right here, or sorry, update. I like it just because I'm an accountant and I'm nerdy and I like things organized, but I click January. So this right here, this expense tracker tab, this is for OpEx expenses, OpEx only, okay? So any invoices that you're getting, any P card transactions, any activity during the month, the expectation is that it's logged here in the expense tracker. So this is pretty self-explanatory, right? You got invoice date, you got account code, there's a drop down that gives you all of your OpEx and contract labor. Excuse me, I forgot to mention that. So contract labor, OpEx, you have the whole NetSuite chart of accounts to choose from. You can also, if you don't want to click that drop down, let's say I just want to post to supplies, you can type in supplies, hit enter, and it'll automatically do it for you, right? I want department, we want invoice number, invoice total, vendor, and just a quick description, right? Now, there's a check right here that I'll get into at the end. That's this column is in NetSuite, and keep that in the back of your head. I want to revisit that after I go through the other inventory logs, because I think this is a really important piece of how we want to use this file. Okay, so that's the expense tracker. This is for OpEx only, okay? Now let's get into your inventory logs. So same thing, I'm going to click January.
Hey, Carter, can I ask you a question real quick?
Yeah.
Maintenance uses an expense tracker. Will that expense tracker feed into this one?
Say that again.
Is maintenance using the same expense tracker we're using? Or do they use a separate one that feeds into this one?
John, I'll answer that afterwards. That's a really good question. We've had that conversation. Let me get to that after we get through the two logs. But that's a good question. Yep. Okay. So this is for F&B, right? Pretty self-explanatory what you're putting in. Any F&B inventory purchases. Obviously, this is specific to Department 10. One thing to note here is column D, this received and processed column right here. I think it's important to point out that when we say received and processed here, the intention is that whenever you get food inventory on site, you've got your sales order, you've got your packing slip or pick ticket, and then you've got your invoice, right? You should be matching the quantities and the dollar amount. You should be matching the dollar amount in your sales order and your invoice and the quantities from all three. Once you've done that, and then you've input it in your inventory, I'm not a chef, however you do that, you say yes to received and processed, right? The next step is you get it into NetSuite, okay? So that's Department 10. This is just an inventory receipt log, that's it, right? That tracks purchases that are received in inventory. So I'll jump to retail. Same exact thing here, right? The only difference is here in column D, and this is really important. And I think this is a good time to talk about how our team is calculating COGS and how this tool will help you to accurately forecast COGS. So specifically to retail, we have this column that says received and easy links, right? So if you're in the golf shop or whatever retail environment that you have at your club, when you get inventory on site, same thing. You should have your order, you should have your packing slip, and you should have your invoice. You should be matching those. And then the first step is you should be receiving that inventory into EasyLinks, okay? Then send it over to your on-site accounting resource so they can get the invoice in NetSuite, and then it should be logged here, okay? Now, the reason I'm harping on receiving this into EasyLinks is the way that we're calculating COGS is very simple, right? It's a simple calculation. We take beginning inventory from the last month, we add up your purchases that are, in theory, going to be logged here, and then we back out your ending inventory count for the month. Now, the reason I'm harping on EasyLinks is because the way that our team does this, Sean Staten created a query that goes and grabs the ending inventory numbers that you're reporting in EasyLinks a month in. So when you click the button to finalize your month-end inventory, that's then feeding a workbook that our team uses to go and calculate COGS, right? So if you, the GM, are sitting there, you know the beginning inventory because you know last month's inventory balance, you know your purchases that are coming here from this log, and then you know your ending inventory that you submitted to EasyLinks, right? So the only variable in my mind is the purchases. So the intention of this log is to ensure that we lock in that purchase number, okay? So with that being said, I want to get into this in NetSuite check right here. And I'll kind of go back in reverse order. But when this column, I think is what potentially takes us to the next level when we talk about DFR accuracy and maintaining our actuals, right? So in this inventory log, there's a report out there in NetSuite, and I'm going to go there now, called the Inventory General Ledger. If you have not used this report, please, everyone has access to it. Even your department heads have access to this. Please search this, add it to your shortcuts. It's a great tool, okay? This report is where we are pulling actuals, or I'm sorry, where we're pulling purchases for the month, okay? So when we go calculate River Club's December COGS, this is where we are getting our purchases number. So you see where I'm going with this. If I'm looking at retail inventory, the soft good and hard good purchases right here in this report, they should match up with what goes here in expense tracker, right? And that's the purpose of this column. Is my vision is that you as a team, and specifically your on-site accounting resource, would be using this tool and comparing it and reconciling it to this inventory general ledger. I mean, I would do it weekly. You might have a different cadence, but if it were me, I'd be doing it weekly to ensure that those purchases that are going in NetSuite are also logged here. That ensures that the actuals that we're reporting and the DFR for COGS that you're going to submit should be very, very, very materially the same, right? So inventory general ledger, it's your best friend when it comes to inventory purchases. Now, the same can be true. The same is true for F&B inventory, right? There's all the F&B inventory lines here for GLs, food, liquor, beer, wine, are all highlighted in this report. Same thing. The expectation is that you're matching up what goes in that F&B inventory log with what goes into inventory general ledger, right? This is a game-changing report. And then very simply, you can do whatever you want, but what I would do is if it's in NetSuite, just say yes. If it's not, just say no. Just so everyone knows, and this is the same for the expense tracker. There's another report for the expense tracker tab, but I'll say this now. When we get to month-end close, our team here in the home office, we're going to be reviewing this. We're going to be doing that check. So anything that's blank or that says no, we're going to call that out, okay? Now, I say we're going to do it month-end. That's the official review. The reality is we're probably going to be looking at this weekly to call out if there's anything that's in expense tracker that's not in NetSuite, in that inventory general ledger, we're going to call it out, right? Hey, is that invoice in process? Have you seen it? Is it sitting on approved bills? Could be multiple places, but let's figure that out, right? Now, conversely, if there's something that's in NetSuite, but not in expense tracker, then you're probably going to have a light DFR, right? Because your actuals are going to be higher than what you're potentially forecasting through this tool, right? So I think the expectation is that your team is doing that review in sync with us so that we're all on the same page, reviewing the inventory general ledger. And then what I'm about to get into here with the expense tracker, okay? So inventory aside, now let's get into the OpEx side, okay? So in NetSuite, there is a report called Account General Ledger. Now, this one's a little bit more complicated, but I'll show you how it works. And once you get it synced up, it's really easy. So when you pull it, it's going to look like this. Now, when you first pull it, it's probably going to have all your balance sheet accounts and everything, right? For the purposes of this, you don't need your balance sheet accounts, obviously, right? So what I would do is you're probably just going to see dates in your property. Click on this ellipsis that says more. You're going to go here to this account line GL style. Okay. Now it's going to pull everything, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll down to where it starts at 6,000. 6,000 are our expense accounts. Okay. Now I'm going to ignore COGS and I'm going to ignore salaries and I'm going to start here at contract labor, okay? So I'm going to click there and then I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to include all the accounts that start with a 6. So I'm going to keep scrolling. Okay, I got there. So right here, whoop, I'm sorry. I meant to hold down shift. Contract labor, so click there. I'm glad I messed up so you guys could see the wrong way to do this. Okay, now I'm going to hold down the shift key. Okay, so I'll hold down shift and then I click here and that's going to select all of those accounts that start with 6 from contract labor all the way down through OpEx. I'm going to click OK. I'm going to make sure I have the right date range. So let's just go ahead and look at January and I'm going to click refresh. So what this does is for all of those expense accounts, it's going to show you all the invoices that went in here, right? So if I were to go back to expense tracker and I'm looking at this, I want to double check. I'm going to look at the GL. I'm going to look at the GL here and I'm going to compare the two, right? So I want to make sure that whatever's here in this account general ledger report is also here in NetSuite. Now, one thing that is a little bit of a bummer is we looked at filtering. There's filters here, so you can filter by vendor, you can filter by account code. Due to some of the permissions, it's not going to let y'all filter that. Now there's a workaround to it. I know that's a downside, and some of y'all called that out. But one of the things that you can do is let's say you're looking at invoice number, right? So I know there's going to be a sporadic amount of activity here, different departments. If you've got an invoice number, you can do it one of two ways. You could pull an invoice number here. You could copy it. So let's just say, I'm going to cheat, but just to show you all how this kind of works. So, okay, I've got this invoice number here, right? I'm going to copy it. If I want to look, if this is in account general ledger, I'm going to click Control F. I'm going to go here and I'm just going to paste this. I'm going to click enter. And now it shows me that's in here, right? The same can be true here. So if I wanted, let's say this is way down the line and I see this on my account general ledger and I say, okay, I want this number. I'm going to go ahead and click it. I can do the same thing here. I click Control F. I click that. And then it's going to take me directly to it, right? So I know it's a little tedious, but it's that's the best way to kind of search if you're trying to find needles in a haystack. But Again, if it's in NetSuite, yes. If not, no. Anything that's no or blank, you should be calling that out. And again, I think it's worth doing this weekly. So those are these three kind of data input tabs that are logging retail purchases, F&B purchases, and expense tracker. So last thing real quick, just to kind of give you an overview of the file. So these are your data uploads are here at the end, right? Your trackers are these three tabs at first. And then you're going to have summary tabs, right? So your property summary is just it's going to grab all the actuals for all departments versus all the budgets for all departments, right? There's also a departmental breakdown, right? So you got department 10, 20, 30, 40, all the way to 65. You should have, not all of you are going to use all these departments, but they're there, right? So if I want to look at 20 and I'm looking at, that's prepaid amortization, that's my budget. You have it by GL, right? It gives you a little variance. Another thing here is there's green and red. So just a quick feature, if I were to just put in, tests, hold on, what GL was that? Cart lease, okay. So cart lease, test, 12,000. I go here and, I need a department, 20. So I'm going to go back to my tab, see how that populated, and now it shows a red, right? It's saying, hey, I'm overburdened versus budget in that line, right? So these columns in these cells, you will not be able to edit due to these nasty formulas in here. But these comments here on the right, these are absolutely for you guys to edit, communicate, make comments, whatever you need to do. And that's in all of the different departmental tabs. So, guys, that is it as far as the spiel of data upload. I know that was a lot thrown at you. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, and then we'll kind of get into some Q&A. So I think the best way to